So the latest episode of My Hero Academia is out, and it is probably pretty much exactly what I thought was going to be coming, and that's kind of a slower episode. I'm seeing some people are already calling it bad. I don't know if I'd go all the way towards bad, but this whole arc in general, this sort of, I would say this is almost, I don't know if an in-between arc is the proper term, but this is sort of just like an in-between sort of thing, the provisional license test, until we get to, the next, like, major, big, quite exciting event, which will come probably not this season, but in Season 4. The provisional license test will probably last a few episodes. I don't know, maybe 5 to 7, I could see it being. And then after that, we basically have a lot of setup for what's going to be a lot of the major plot points of Season 4. So we're going to begin to move into some very interesting things. I'm not sure how many people are sort of going to vibe with this test, because we did already see something, I would say, kind of similar in the sports festival. The one thing I do like about the provisional test is that it does kind of touch on things that did happen in that sports festival. So let's just get right into the episode, talk about some things that are good and some things that are also, kind of bad. Let's hop into it. So this is episode 53, which is called The Test, because, this is the beginning of the provisional license exam. The episode starts out with kind of Deku using his shoot style to save All Might. At the end of the last episode, Bakugo is testing out one of his new techniques, the armor-piercing shot, where he concentrates his explosion into a smaller point rather than like a big whole explosion from his hand, and it creates some falling debris that is going to fall and hit All Might, but Deku kind of uses his new technique, the shoot style, to destroy the rock before it hits him. So what Deku does is he sort of imitates some movements that he kind of learned from Ida, and rather than going to use his fist like All Might did, Deku is now going to transition to a style where he's using his legs to attack. This was kind of advised by All Might a bit. All Might gave him Deku a hint in the last episode that Deku is trying too hard to emulate All Might, and instead he should try and think of other things, because Deku, his arms have degenerated at this point. He's used the explosive one for all power so much, like overused it when his body couldn't handle it, that now his arms are, on the verge of, irreparable damage. So Deku is going to transition to the shoot style. Now, I actually do rather like the shoot style, and Deku's kind of use of the full cowling to make it work. Moving forward, it's going to be very interesting to see Deku utilize that versus the beginning of the series where it's just all, the big winding punches that Deku was throwing out. So we get some wrap up of the events of all of the students training, to kind of prepare ultimate moves, ultimate techniques, big flashy special moves for the provisional tests that they actually have. We do see a short scene at the dormitory where the other girls are kind of picking on Ochako about her crush. She mentions that her heart feels sort of fluttered. Of course, she's referring to Deku. This is a little bit of a setup for something that will happen in the provisional test. But, it's a short, cute little scene with this. I do like Ochako a lot. She's she's a fun character for sure. Now, one thing that is always good about My Hero is it does move quick, because, a lot of days pass that we're not kind of stuck here watching the students train and stuff. A lot of it happens off screen, and before we know it, the students actually arrive at the place where the provisional test is going to be taking place. Now, right at the start, as soon as the students, Deku and Class 1A, they arrive at the testing area, another school approaches them. Shiketsu, which is another top-tier school. They say UA is the big privileged, illustrious school in Eastern Japan, and the Shiketsu is the big illustrious school in the West. So this is kind of set up as UA's rival a little bit, and we do get a lot of talking about one student in particular from this school, Inasa. Eraserhead mentions actually was the student who had the top scores of all students that got into UA through recommendation, but Inasa actually turned down and went to Shiketsu instead. So the point of this being that Inasa is a very powerful student, and he actually had higher scores than Todoroki. So already they're setting this dude up to be incredibly, strong, because he's on the, Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki sort of top tier level. So, it'll be interesting to see him actually in the provisional test. Now, one thing too about him is he is a very goofy guy. I almost kind of liken him to Oikeyasu, however the fuck you say his name, from JoJo Part 4. He's a very similar character. That's not the, I swore I thought they were gonna get that voice actor to voice this guy. He's also the dude who voice acted Obito in Naruto. Like, this is the perfect character for that dude to voice. I think he also voiced the one hunter in Hunter x Hunter, Knuckle. He would have been the perfect voice actor for Inasa, but I guess they decided to go in a different direction. The next character we get introduced to is Miss Joke. Now, I love this character because she creates a very funny dynamic with Eraserhead, where her ability, her quirk, is that she can force her opponents to laugh, giving her an advantage, dulling their thinking and their movements so they're not really able to move around, and she's then able to beat their ass. So she has a funny dynamic where she is like hitting on Eraserhead, slash kind of dicking around with him, and his very quick retorts are fantastic. Like, she mentions that their, hero agencies used to be close to each other, and her exact line is, "In our cycle of helping and being helped, our mutual love for each other bloomed." And before she could finish, Eraserhead cuts her off and said, "No, it didn't." Like, I absolutely love these two characters. They go back and forth a lot throughout this arc. And, if there was ever a time where Eraserhead reminded me more of Kakashi, this is it right here. This is where I love Eraserhead. He's just not having fun. He's just like, "Oh, you're annoying the fuck out of me, please." Now, we do meet a lot of other students before eventually all the students change into their costumes and actually get in sort of this, assembly hall and prepare for the test. Now, the test is interesting in that it's not like a traditional fight or anything like that. Basically, the students all get 3 sort of targets or circles, bullseyes, that they can put anywhere on their body, and then every student is given 6 balls. And if you hit one of the opponent's targets with one of their balls, it lights up. And then once a student has all 3 targets get lit up, they actually are then disqualified from the test. And at that point, the student who dealt the knockout blow, lit up the 3rd target, they get credited basically for 1 point. And if they get 2 points, they actually pass the test. It's mentioned that there's over 1,500 students actually in the test, and only 100 of them will actually pass. So we see Deku sort of, begin to think about this, about how there's so many students. They all only have 6 balls, so they only have enough to sort of basically hit the exact number of targets they need to pass the test. So Deku starts thinking, are they telling us to, kind of swoop in at the last second and steal the 3rd target from someone else who has maybe already gotten the 1st and 2nd target? It's going to be a very interesting exam. And it is. It does play out in an interesting way. Again, some other things do get set up that lead into what will eventually happen in Season 4. So it's not like this test doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? Things that happen here will eventually build upon each other. Another big thing, I'm not going to give too many details about it, but we do get more insight into Todoroki and Endeavor during this arc, which eventually is going to set up to big events that happen way later in the manga related to growth of Todoroki and Endeavor's characters. So it's good. I do personally like to see the trajectory of a character, like a kind of a disgraced character who maybe tries to get redemption, right? So a lot of good stuff starts here in this test. Even if I think it can be a bit dull at times, I think because it focuses on characters, for me personally, this test focuses on characters a lot that I don't really give so much of a damn about, I think, which kind of makes this this whole test feel like it drags on a little bit longer than it should. After all of the targets and the balls are handed out to all the students, the building sort of opens up and reveals like a massive sort of arena with several different sort of terrains that the students can utilize to, best for their quirk. Like we see a rocky sort of region, we see like a city region. It looks like there's like a almost like a destroyed power plant or something like that. Like just a lot of different areas. Now Deku deduces that what's going to happen is all of the other students from the other schools are going to attack UA because they don't know what any of the other students' quirks are like, right? So you're going up against an opponent you know nothing about. You don't know what their abilities are. But all the other students know about the UA students like Deku, Bakugo, Ida, etc. because they all saw them on the sports festival. When, the gang was meeting some of the students earlier on in the episode, it was sort of mention like, oh, I saw you on TV at the sports festival, yada, yada, yada. So Deku realizes that the UA students are actually going to be in trouble because they're the only ones whose powers are widely known. So a lot of these fuckers from the other schools are going to feel a lot more comfortable attacking the students of UA because they know what they're getting into, whereas if they attack other fuckers from other schools, they're going to be going up against opponents they don't know anything about their quirks. So Deku tries to get all of the students from Class 1A to group together, but Bakugo fucks off because, he's a dick. That's what he does. Kirishima actually follows him, and then we also see Todoroki leaves and goes off on his own because Todoroki does mention that his quirk is not really suited for fighting in big groups, which, does make sense with all the fire and the ice that he's going to be shooting out, right? Now, the episode sort of ends with many students just sort of appearing as the test begins and throwing a ton of the balls at Class 1A. Class 1A is able to respond, like Deku uses his shoot style. A lot of the other characters kind of utilize their quirks to defend themselves against the balls. And Deku remarks that, Class 1A has come very far with their quirk training and that they're ready for the test. And that's sort of where the episode ends right there. We also do see Eraserhead talking with Miss Joke more about how, this is basically a ritual that UA always gets targeted at the beginning. And Eraserhead says, like, it wasn't necessary. He didn't think it was that big of a deal to tell them about the fact that they would be targeted because it doesn't change, like, the fact that they're still going to have to win. And he also does mention that while their quirks were revealed to all the other students, in the real world, as pro heroes, that's the way the shit will go down anyway. Villains are going to know all about you. They're going to know what the fuck you could do. So Eraserhead mentions that UA actually has the advantage. They got the ball rolling sooner, basically implying that the UA students will grow and mature more rapidly than the other students from other schools, which certainly does make a lot of sense to me. The last thing I suppose I could talk about is the next episode preview. There's something too crazy that goes on in the next episode preview, but it does focus on one of the characters, one of the students from Shiketsu, the Western Japanese kind of, illustrious school. We know that the episode is going to be focusing around her, but we don't know really in which manner yet. All I'm going to say is that many people consider her to be the actual best girl or the actual best waifu in My Hero. So I will leave it there. So, y'all let me know, did you like this episode? Did you not like this episode? I did think it was a little slower. Not a lot happens. I think the animation might be very, very good during portions of this provisional test, which certainly can sort of draw the appeal there during something that's maybe not so exciting as, like, shit we just saw, like the Forest arc where they're fighting against a League of Villains, or, All Might versus All for One. Obviously we're not going to get anything on that level, but, we could see some pretty good animation coming up. So, thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.